A strategic vision links the strategic intent and direction and resides within the shared values and unique culture of each organization. Let's assume you've articulated your end states or vision. How does your statement stand up to these tests? The first test: when looking back, can you see how you could achieve the end state from where the organization currently sits? If so, you do not have a vision. A vision is a future state that you currently do not know how to reach, but through a series of strategic moves, migrates the organization closer, and over time discovers the connections to finally achieve the end state. The second test. Recall the characteristics of effective strategic visions we spoke of about in earlier broadcasts. Namely, that a strategic vision statement should be imaginable, desirable, feasible, focused, flexible, and communicable, easily explained. Does the vision pass that test? The third test. The statement should express or reflect directly or indirectly the shared values of the organization, because it is your shared values that will ultimately define your organization in the global environment. The fourth test. What is the context the statement creates? Effective statements frame the market customer context in which the organization lives. The fifth test, inclusiveness. While not always directly stated, does the statement recognize the interests of all parties, such as clients, suppliers, all staff, investors, and other stakeholders? A rule of thumb used by John Bachman of the Policy Center is, quote, "A one-iteration vision statement is a loser," unquote. You will probably generate multiple versions before you are satisfied and it meets your constituents' needs. So how long might it take? Strategic visions are created over a period of time, directly connected to the commitment to create a new future and to the ascribed importance and energy dedicated to the process by leadership. The desire by leadership teams to complete the process over a weekend retreat at a nice resort between golf engagements may demonstrate the perceived value the team places on a vision's contribution to driving the organization. Certainly, the desire to complete the process in a couple of days should be avoided. By the way, I'm okay with playing golf or engaging in some exercise during retreats. The diversion allows those guys David Myers describes as working in the brain's basement to be processing, potentially creating new connections, insights, innovative breakthroughs. Activities away from the constant rigor of the planning table should be included, especially those that require the team to participate together, those that provide individual reflective time, those that may be very different from activities undertaken at other team meetings or events, those that provide for social time. All of those types of interaction can be included in a 2 to 3 day retreat. Whatever you decide, I would recommend a minimum event that includes the team spending at least 2 evenings together. Experience shows that conversations move to a different level when a team spends that amount of time together. Generally, the overall time frame for developing the vision may take several weeks to many months. I'm reminded of a communications rule of thumb. If you ask a thoughtful question, you should give the person you asked time to give you a thoughtful response. How frequently have you wrestled or thought about an issue for several hours or days, and then walked up to a colleague and asked, Do you think it's a good idea to do X and expect an immediate answer from the person? Is that fair to the issue, to the person? Would you really want the question of where you desire the organization to be in 5 to 8 years decided in 1 day, 3 days, or even a week? What would serve your organization best? Who should have a strategic vision? The answer is simple. Every organization that wishes to be successful in the long term. I came across an article a few weeks ago describing the outcomes of a local fire department that had established a strategic vision. Jeffrey Meston, chief of the fire district, said, quote, "We have taken a very traditional fire service organization and taught it to change. This includes a focus on open communications within the department and within the community served, articulating a mission, empowering our personnel to do their job, providing clear priorities, and focusing on success," unquote. By developing the vision, the department created a more humanistic approach to leadership, management, techniques, policies, procedures, relationships, and actions. A sample of the changes: they opened the lines of communication with all employees by having what they called donut diplomacy meetings. Meetings with a box of donuts. They bridged the generation gap by changing the way the organization communicated at different levels. They enhanced the hiring and recruitment processes by conducting marketing surveys at paramedic schools, followed by a ride-along in the fire truck. They established citizen days, making connections with their communities. There are challenges in developing strategic visions. Over the past 2 years during these broadcasts, we have put significant emphasis on the impact leaders' mindsets have on their ability to think about the future. An extension of that line of thought is using such appraisal tools to let the leadership team members see their preferences for thought processing. Using an instrument such as the Keirsey temperament sorter, you can show team members that their preference for approaching and handling issues might be different. For example, the Keirsey temperament sorter described preferences as 4 quadrants, and they are artisans, guardians, idealists, and rationals. Artists are people who value freedom and spontaneity. They want to be without constraint, at liberty to act on their impulses, play, and create. Guardians value belonging to a group or community. They maintain stability through responsible, conservative, traditional behavior. Idealists value personal growth and authenticity and integrity. They yearn to develop themselves fully as individuals and to facilitate growth in others. Rationals value competence and intelligence. They strive to learn, know, predict, and control the resources in their environment. About 2 months ago, working with a group of 21 people, we had the group take the assessment and found the members had the following distribution. There were 10 guardians, 2 artisans, 5 rationals, and 4 idealists. To demonstrate the impact on how they would approach a simple visioning exercise, they had to plan a vacation in their respective subgroups. As anticipated, the guardians very carefully and logically defined a set of assumptions about the holiday, careful to include everyone's ideas and ensuring everyone remained part of the group. After about an hour of planning, they narrowed the list to 4 options, all practical, within a clearly defined budget that everyone in the group could participate in. The 2 artisans, on the other hand, immediately listed all the activities they loved to do and the places they had dreamed of exploring. Within 12 minutes, they had selected their destinations: a trip to Machu Picchu, the Galapagos Islands, and finish the holiday on the beaches of Costa Rica, a 4-week trip. They knew what they wanted to eat, what they would do generally in each location, and that flexibility was important. They didn't want to be locked into a specific itinerary, and it was okay to go their own separate ways. The point isn't that one is better than the other. Rather, armed with the data from the experiment, the group recognized how their preferred approaches could impact how they entered and participated in the vision conversations. The combination of participants enhanced the visioning process. A successful strategic vision demands a successful and robust communication strategy for the organization to succeed. Here's a bit of a unique example of a company communicating their strategic vision. About 6 months ago, working with the leadership of a company to help them more clearly understand the concept of strategic vision and to test their expression of it, we used their corporate decision-making process. As the CEO and board of directors reflected on how they made decisions, they expressed it this way: the foundational element and guide of all our decision-making is referring back to the stated vision. That vision generated the development of strategies and business plans. Those elements rest on 5 key pillars, namely the shared values of the organization, the corporate culture, the ownership model of the company, it's an employee-owned company, its governance model, and the unique set of limitations for financial options created by the ownership and cultural components. The following remodel reflects their thoughts. First, their vision, their strategies, their business plans resting on their core values, unique ownership model, unique governance model, and financial limitations. Using other words, one might say they created a vision for the future, but they wanted to communicate that vision lives every day and can only become a reality in the context of their business. It simultaneously is built on and drives the balance between the hard and the soft side, as some people like to call it, of the business. By expressing their story through the decision-making model, they have helped educate the organization on its vision and the role of its vision, having given the employees more clarity on what the organization makes choices about, and has certainly engaged the employees in thinking and using the decision model as they execute their daily jobs. Employees are feeling more confident and connected than ever before to achieve the company's strategic vision. Strategic visioning, writes Jack Bachman of the Policy Center, quote, is a logical, systematic methodology to create a vision of your desired future and develop and implement actions to build that vision into reality. Strategic visioning requires a change in attitude and different manner of thinking. Strategic visioning requires a belief that within what you perceive to be your limited sphere of influence and control can bring about significant changes for you and your organization, unquote. This is particularly crucial for small and medium-sized organizations whose productivity and competitiveness is tested on a daily basis in the new economy. Educational institutions have a particular challenge given the explosion and access to knowledge that will continue into the future around the world. The complexities of the emerging order of world business and of the desire to define your future destiny with clarity can be addressed through disciplined thought and making connections where connections don't appear to exist. Intuition. You can make a difference, and it takes serious work. Thank you.
We will now continue with the second question and answer session. I'm going to refer to one of our questions that came through with fax. Let me ask you, can one develop a good vision without a clear and defined mission? Which comes first? That's a question from Santo Domingo. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I tend not to get too tied up with language. I think there's a vision, and some people will then add mission to it and sort of separate the two. In my experiences that I've seen companies do both, will have a vision and a mission. Some companies will only have a mission, and some companies will only have a vision. And rather than get tied up into the language, I think it's what you're trying to accomplish. And so whether you call it a mission or a vision, is the vision is something that is, we don't know how we'll currently get there. It is future state. It drives us, it energizes us, it gets us where we want to go, and it engages the organization. And if people do make a distinction between the vision and the mission, sometimes the mission would be the next, the midterm. What do we have to go do now? So, for example, let's say we wanted to go mountain climbing and we had Everest in the background. So our ultimate vision is to climb Everest, but we have to get over K2 or the smaller mountain first, and so our mission might be to take that one before we make the next step. So
is a 3-year period a good time interval to develop a vision statement for, or is that too short?
That seems to be a very good sort of measure these days because of the timing and because of the speed with which business is going.
And how often do you reconsider your vision statement? How often do you have to revise that and revisit that?
Well, as soon as you achieve it, you certainly have to revise it. I do think that as you're going through your planning process each year, or you think something unusual happens in the geopolitical setting that changes, or the global environment, that you need to be conscious of it and do a review at those times. So it's something that should always be at least in the leadership's mind and taking a look at and just checking in. Because one of the things that as soon as something impacts the vision that is going to require you to move it, you will disengage the employees if they feel lost. So you want to make sure that that's clear out there all the time.
Great, thank you. For our next question, we go to Panama. Go ahead, please.
Yes, greetings from Panama. My question is the following. Does culture and education, does this have an impact in the way we are then guardians, artisans, rationals, or idealists? Does this have an impact?
Okay, so thank you for the question. If we think about the guardians, artisans, rationals, and etc., we're really talking about how Kiersey has decided or has used instrumentation to help people sort what their preferences are. So it's more personality based than it is necessarily cultural or education. But I think we also have to recognize that even though we have a personality, how we express the personality and how we interact with people can be modified in sort of as we develop our personalities and over time. So particularly up through our teenage years, for example. And then as we get older, we are working in different contexts, and because of that, we start blurring the lines between our contextual self and our developed self. And so the answer is that being a purist about it is really that it's a personality based, but there are some influences in terms of development over time, and just making those distinctions is difficult sometimes.
Great, sure. Thanks. We go back to Puebla, Mexico for our next question. Go ahead, please.
This is a question from a student. The question about access to education. Students and teachers are in a competitive environment, and how does the information you expressed in your module, how does this impact education and basic education?
So I might not be understanding the question correctly, but I'll answer it as I heard it. Okay. So I think that the educators
are educating people to live in the world that they either envision themselves or that the community is envisioning. And so we're trying to educate people to become more functional in world society. And if that's true, and the students may not understand at their age that that is a value to them, okay, you could say that you might be in conflict. But I believe that if you look at what many of the educational institutions have been doing since the introduction of quality in the late 80s and 90s, that those institutions started looking at what are we delivering to the community, and as such, how do we design our educational systems to support that? And how do we develop the curriculum so that these people can be most effective contributors to society? And so I don't necessarily see them as being in conflict, even though I do recall being in the classroom and wondering what my teacher was doing when I was younger and may not have been aligned.
All right, thank you. We stay in Puebla for our next question. Go ahead, please.
Here we're talking and we're calling from the Technological University from Puebla, and this is a very interesting subject. I would like you to sum up in 3 words for an organization, be it or an education and a business environment. Could you please define vision in 3 words?
A future state.
A future state that you want to be in.
No, that's more than 3 words.
That's more than 3 words. Okay.
But the future state has to have some characteristics which I've described earlier. So it's a very good question. It is one that I think challenges people, but it is a future state, one which again is desirable, feasible, etc., and one that is very engaging for the people. Unfortunately, the 3 words doesn't get to the emotion and the drive that's required and the involvement of the whole human being in that process, and so it's hard to do that and probably hard to translate as well.
Great. Okay, thank you. For our next question, we go to Santo Domingo, and I'm going to read a question that was faxed in. We are very used to developing concrete strategic plans, but not concrete strategic visions for our organizations. Usually our plans are very confidential, not shared many times at all levels within our organizations. Doesn't telling everyone about our strategic vision makes us vulnerable to imitation by others or to our competitors?
Okay, thank you. It's a very nice question. And I certainly have a point of view on it, and I'll share that. One of the things that I firmly believe and have used throughout my business life is that if you want to move an organization forward, or if you would like to achieve an objective, you really need to engage the people who are going to help you get there. So let's put it into a sports sort of metaphor. So if I've got a team and the team doesn't know what our vision or objective is for let's say the vision for the season and the objective for this game, but the vision for the season, how are they going to be able to contribute and participate? So you do want to have it so that everyone in the organization knows it. In fact, everyone from the receptionist at the front door to the CEO should be able to articulate in their own words what it is, and that it's all integrated. So that's one piece. As I think about what it said, the vision being articulated to the community, the business communities, or the competitors, it's something that many organizations publish in their annual reports, which are their public statements. The value of having the clients or your customers know what your vision is that they'd like to know where you're going to. People have a tendency of wanting to do business with people who have a future. And so particularly business clients want to have relationships with businesses that they know are going somewhere so that they can actually understand their own vision where they want to go. Is this particular supplier aligned and will be with me for the next 2, 3, 4 years as they achieve their work? And for the competitors, I think if you know and feel comfortable and confident in your vision, the competitors should be frightened by your vision as opposed to you worrying about them. So I think the message there is that you always focus on the end. As soon as you start focusing on your competitors, you will actually start undermining your own effectiveness in the marketplace.
That's right. Great. I think our next question is from Guadalajara. Go ahead, please. I'm sorry, it's actually we're going back to Santo Domingo. Go ahead, please, Santo Domingo.
Good morning. What is your experience in terms of defining visions for the high levels of government? And how can we then define a vision for a Latin American country, for example, and how important is it to define a vision?
Okay. So I'll be honest that I don't work at the highest levels of government. I think that would be, I would want to make sure of that. But I do think that any political party or any group that happens to be in power does have a vision. How they articulate it, how it might get translated via the media to the population certainly has a strong impact on how people understand it or how they experience it. But I do think that governments are interested, and governments do pursue, and they do spend time, a lot of time, as they think about where they want to go and how they want to integrate the messaging. I mean, I clearly know of people who worked with the U.S. government, with state governments, with community governments that have spent a great deal of time wrestling with the issues and trying to articulate what it is that we need to do to move the country or the state forward. And as I think about Latin America, I do think that it's very important for the governments to have that vision. They're living in a global community, being impacted by the global community. There's a lot of cultural and rich heritage in the Latin American communities which needs to be protected. And I think you need to go back and look at what are the things that have made you strong, bring those along, and how do you leverage those into the future to make it successful for yourself.
Okay, thank you. We go back to Chihuahua, Mexico for our next question. Go ahead, please.
Sí, buenos días.
Good morning. My question is very similar to the last question. We're a public university in Latin America, so we really struggle to try and transmit this concept of vision and communicate it to our students. So I would like to see what you would suggest for universities such as ours, that much of our efforts just go in trying to survive. What do you recommend that we could try and implement with our students to try and communicate this vision concept?
Okay, thanks. Vision is not just the purview of business, of government, or of educational institutions. So as I think about and reflect on my own life, when I am trying to understand something like that and how it applies, I say, well, how does it apply to me? And so one of the early things that you could do with students is helping them understand what is the vision for what they would like to accomplish and why are they there, what do they need to get out of from the university, etc. And then how is that preparing them for the future? So are they helping them clarify, helping them articulate, and helping them actually write down something for themselves, and make sure that they're writing down something that they don't know how to get to yet, so that we're following the sort of the rules or the parameters of how you would establish a good vision. But start there. I think the second thing that you could do is that since you are working in a certain community-based educational systems, that there's probably a significant similarity in the student base and the population in your classes. And as you look at those populations in your classes, you can certainly take on some local community issue and have them go through a process of saying, well, how would we look at this and what could we possibly establish as a vision, so that you've got sort of a case study, but actually one that's linked and rooted in the current community. So those are a couple of things that I might suggest.
So it has to be meaningful to the students on a personal level,
right.
And then they can share the vision of the university, and it also has to be meaningful for the employee to share the vision of the organization.
Absolutely. There's two elements to it, and I referred to it in one of my previous broadcasts, and that is that if the organization has a vision and it's going somewhere, okay, for me to engage as an employee, or in this case as a student, if I don't know where my vision is, I don't know how engaging in working for this company or engaged working with this group is going to help me move forward to my vision. And so we have to be able to align them.
Great. Thank you for your excellent questions, but we have run out of time. We hope that you have enjoyed participating once again in this exciting multilingual and multinational program. We invite you to participate in the 9th video conference of the 2004 series, Success with World-Class Competencies, airing November 11, 2004, and titled Organizational Creativity and Change, Managing Image, Media, and Results. For additional information on this video conference series, please consult your participants manual or our website, where you will find the dates and specific topics for each program. On behalf of all of us, I thank you for your ongoing participation and interest in this program. We would also like to extend a cordial invitation to all the members of our ITC network to register to attend our 9th annual meeting of associates, to be held next January 19th through the 22nd in San Diego, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas, with an exciting agenda featuring the theme of risk management and security in our globalized society. Thank you, and see you soon.